Welcome to the Fieldnotes podcast, presented by Seaworthy Functional Medicine. Seaworthy exists to help you overcome your complex health challenges so you can be fully vital. Now, here's your host, Dr. Rob Downey.
What do we need to know about lifestyle medicine and our connection to the natural world to be our absolute healthiest? Today, we are so fortunate to be joined by Dr. Michael Blahut. Dr. Michael, thanks so much for being here today.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me, Rob, and I look forward to the conversation.
Well, in getting ready for today, you made me want to be in Costa Rica, and I found your content just super provocative and inspiring. So I wanted our audience to know you're a family practice physician, came out of the prestigious University of Arizona Integrative Training Program, with Dr. Weil's genius, stamp imprinted on that whole approach. And then the thing that I think stands out, and I thank our audience for joining us, is just there's a purity to your message in that it's so much, well, lifestyle is such a lackluster word for the power of this, right? But it's really about the power of our lives, where we live, and the connection to where we live as the wellspring of our health. And I like it. Of course, your training includes supplements and functional medicine testing, but that's not what we're going to talk about today. We're just going to talk about how you live and how that affects how you can be healthy.
Yeah, I think that's super important. It often gets, glossed over in a lot of these sort of modern contexts of medicine. I need help. I have a problem. How do I get that? And as doctors, we're just trained to go to giving somebody something, a prescription, and often the prescription is take this thing. And I've just in my own personal experience, my own health, and working with patients, found that that's just a drop in the bucket of all the things we can do. And I'm not often emphasizing enough of those lifestyle things. So then I just try to delve into what is the reason why, and how did we get to where we are today, especially in medicine. And now we have this functional medicine, integrative medicine world that is trying to move people back to a state of balance. And there's just, a wealth of information about how we can do that from our, ancestors and traditional medicine. And so, yeah, I love to really just work on inspiring people to experience it in their body. And it's very practical because let's say you have a budget for your health, and there's only so many supplements you can buy or practitioners to see your treatments, which can help you. And then, that whole concept of lifestyle, I think, if we change that into the life you live is your medicine, then it starts to turn on different healing mechanisms or different decisions we make. And it's such a broad category, but there are so many tools I've found to be really practical for people.
Beautiful. Well, we're going to start with our original biological blueprint. What a beautiful phrase that is, and how that sets the foundation for health and healing any disease.
Yeah, I like to bring this up to people because it's a reminder of, when we're born, our body has the sense of it wants to be alive. And it's in the context of our environment and of our family and the love we receive and the nutrition that we get. And that sort of blueprint is meant to thrive. And it's not meant to, collapse. And we have to keep, fortifying it with things later. We have fortified grains, cereals, and like really, the concept to go back to is just a reminder that our body wants to be in health, and its natural, disposition is to be healthy, and that influences our body and influences our mind and our, sort of perspective. And so the reason why I bring up this blueprint is because we have, the science already to know a lot of things of where our human body, this biology, thrives best. And of course, these are all containers of the environment we live in, the relationships we keep, our stressors, nutrition, and in that we can kind of go back to, this is where I think people got this modern term of biohacking. It's really tapping back into what our body's meant to be doing. And there are simple principles out there that, one that I like to just harp on a lot because it's so easy and simple, and just people they take it for granted, is just getting outside in nature and getting natural sunlight. And we know that our bodies are designed to thrive in that environment. And the more we connect with that, the healthier we're going to be. And the opposite is true, is the more we do, stay indoors on artificial light and the less sunlight we get. I know that's hard up in Alaska. Um, but there are ways of doing it and tapping into these natural rhythms that tell our system that we're healthy. This is good to thrive in. And simple things like that, I think, are often overlooked. I mean, the sunlight narrative, I think, is slowly crumbling down, and we know there's risks to everything, but there's a tremendous benefit that's been underrated, especially in medicine, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I see it all the time. I think I often share that sort of my sentiment that a lot of us, until we access these things and get the benefit, it's almost like we're in a torpor or sort of under a
Uh,
spell. Um,
uh,
like it breaks the spell. We
right.
feel the sunlight and
Yeah.
sort of wake up to ourselves and our original blueprint. And I do have to say, I think a lot of my conventional colleagues would be offended at the idea that conventional medicine takes the premise that we're broken. But I think of that phrase that if there's two wolves
Uh,
and you want to be successful, right, you have to think about which wolf you feed.
right.
And I mean, if we feed the narrative of our health, that's what how we're going to believe and act. And if we focus on disease and brokenness, we're going to kind of
Right.
set that narrative too. So
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it, because the focus really is that we could have, and also this is just how we are. We know, like through psychology, is that the human brain is bent on the negative uh, influence more than the positive, but we can keep retraining that, is just focusing on the positive, which is the 99% of things that are going on all the time are pretty positive. And then, sometimes we have that 1% of a health issue that we're consumed by it, and it's very hard to focus on the positive. Doesn't mean don't look at that 1%, but it means, broaden our perspective and to know, like, all right, my body's meant to heal. How do I feed it the right things so that it turns on the processes that are healing? And what is that symptom telling me that I'm doing that maybe isn't the right thing for me? And whether that's
mhm,
sitting all day, or in a job I don't like, or eating the wrong foods. And so these
mhm,
are like times that we can focus, like, on the health side, which is like feeding the wolf that we know is going to support us, more than just like, all right, you have pain, take this, ibuprofen, your pain's going to go away, keep doing what you're doing. And
yeah,
I know that's not, it's just, we have a giant, momentum in medicine that's what we move to in helping people, and which is why now so many people are seeking out care like what you're giving and the podcast that you have, is because we know that's not the right approach, but somehow, we forgot about in medicine and in general that this is very, very potent to, lifestyle is generally, overrated as far as how much it can help people.
mm. Yeah, yeah. Two things as we segue into UV and circadian and infrared, and one is just I had a chat with Joe Rignol, the guy that supports me, and a freestanding powerhouse in this space, and we were just talking about how the thing about life hacking is just that when you think about the term hacking, I
Right.
mean the whole thing hacking is kind of dark, right?
Yeah.
But these principles that we're talking about are turning on our native blessing.
Right.
So I've never really resonated much with the life hacking, but
Right.
also there's that Jack Johnson line, we've gone beyond where we should have gone. I mean, at some point,
Mhm.
conventional medicine uh, sort of just became overly enamored of one bug, one drug, uh,
Right.
and didn't kind of remember we're innately whole. Our body knows
Yeah,
the way. So yeah.
exactly. And then we kind of get stuck in this story, and then we live it out because it feels very powerful, and we don't take the time to, recheck check on ourselves what feels right. And also, it's kind of like stupidly simple in a way. It's like, how many doctors do you need to see to
Hmm.
tell you there's like probably a very few things that are not working for you? And I know, I feel like a lot of my job is psychology, and I'm sure you feel that the same. Is just changing the way we think about ourselves, changing the way we think about how life is and nature is and our health is. It's just once we change the way that we think about things, we're able to find the motivation to do things differently. And I mean, that's like a deep, deep subject, I'm sure, just the psychology of everything. And I think it is true that we've moved towards this sort of take a pill for every problem mentality. And that's to, of course, to a benefit of probably the, economics that play at medicine in some way. This is such a dilemma of we want to help people, but someone's got to make money somewhere, and it gets a little complicated.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't
Very
really
messy.
know what the answer is, except for I just feel really excited to get people to experience health differently in their body, and to say, well, how powerful is it to just stop for 5 minutes and take some deep breaths? And there's a sense of, wow, I feel better than I did before. So how much
Mhm.
better can I feel if I do more
Mhm.
things? And
Yeah.
that's how I moved to, create this kind of focus is lifestyle, where you live in the world, what are your stressors? And I purposely try not to focus on things for people that are like, you're eating a bad diet, change your diet, but let people kind of come to the conclusion by feeling that this isn't this doesn't feel good for me. So
Mhm.
in that way, it's more sustainable in my sense, because I don't like to tell people what to do. I don't think that's our job. It's just to bring someone to a widen their perspective maybe, or get them a different sense about what they're capable of, and to experience that. I know this is like a philosophy, discussion, but it seems that, lifestyle in that sense has been a little bit put on the it's underrated and put on the back burner for a lot of people.
Mhm. Well, this will be fun. So let's talk about light and circadian rhythm. And
All right.
worth
Yeah.
noting, there are ways for people to do it in Alaska, but then a little life hacking comes back in, right?
Yeah,
With full
yeah.
spectrum lights and stuff like that. But yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to hear your perspective on that and how you help people shift. I know even just with seasonal depressive disorder, which I know there's a huge amount of people that don't realize that affects them, the light changes, and how much, what I've kind of learned throughout the years is, just because I'm a very curious individual and I ask a lot of questions, just to say like, what's really going on here? And then going back to biology and studying, what do other animals do? What does nature do? Why are we separate? Why do we separate ourselves from the sort of natural cycles of things like
Mhm.
seasonality and, of course, waking up and going to bed at the right time of day? And it turns out like that's what you brought up the original blueprint. That's what our body's designed for the most people. When the sun is rising, we get this, cortisol response. We wake up, our body, like, there's this kind of concept of like a precognitive movement in biology, which means that we don't have to think it. Our body's doing it, and then it becomes aware to us like, oh, I'm awake. But you're actually waking up before you actually consciously wake up out of sleep. And that's determined by these cycles, the circadian rhythm, by the natural light that we're exposed to. And what's really I found powerful is just to link ourselves back to that natural rhythm, so that our body's doing what it is designed to do, and things start to get better, like our energy levels change, our sleep quality improves, our, hormones are more supported in a natural circadian rhythm cycle. And as you brought up, light is such a huge cue for that. It's not the only thing, but light and darkness, of course, that's like the spectrum. You need light in the morning and darkness at night for our brain to know what to do. And I love that, now in the past couple years, I've noticed there's way more people talking about light, information about sunlight, information about, I'm wearing these glasses because I found if I'm on the computer a lot, the blue light from my computer is artificial light, makes me feel really tired. It makes me feel more hungry later. And there's just a lot of science to explain that. When I found that out, I'm like, wow, that makes sense. That's how I was
Mhm.
feeling. And if I wear these when I'm on the computer a lot, I feel better. I have more energy. I'm less fatigued at the end of the day, and I'm not less looking for snacks. And like I used to, like when I was doing a lot of work, like in a typical clinic setting, I'd just be constantly feeling like I'm really hungry. Of course, your brain is using a lot of calories, but then I thought this something else seemed off. And it was mostly just partly had to do with this mitochondrial functioning, how my body uses glucose, the time that insulin and the leptin hormones are being secreted. So I find that like a big hack for all of us, if you want to call it a hack, like you mentioned, we should be thinking about, especially in higher latitudes, is how to use the circadian rhythm for our advantage. And I wonder, what brought me here to Costa Rica is a big part of that because, we have less variation in seasonality because we're closer to the equator, which means that my body's a little more stable and knows what to predict. And, I love, you know, I love to be in nice sunlight like most people do, go on vacation somewhere. But I wonder, what do you do? Or like, how do you work with patients in the higher latitudes? I know you can get different lights. I know there's like different spectrum of UV you can give yourself and, vitamin D, a lot of people think of.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what's your perspective on this?
Well, I certainly am familiar just out of necessity for my well-being and my patients. So we'll have folks get a hold of a full spectrum light, the best
Mhm.
quality they can afford, and be aware that different lights have different ratings, how close they have to be to the person's retina. And then
Right.
kind of the geeky part that I love is a certain number of photons. I invite
Yeah.
people to think about a certain number of photons have to hit the retina during the awakening window to create a physiologic dawn with the pituitary cascade release.
Mm.
And that's 30 minutes of entrainment daily for the first month of winter, and then about 15 minutes a day of maintenance, and somewhere between 7 and 9 in the morning. I talk to people about the fact that we are genetically and biologically hunter gatherers who started on the equator. And so, if
Yeah.
they want to understand who we are and how we roll, just do the thought experiment of sort of, Mother Nature turning a light switch on at 8 a.m. and flicking it off at 8 p.m. and then mimic that. And that means during the longer days of the year, they need dark blackout blinds and get
Right.
into the darkened room.
Mm.
And those are some of the biggies. A lot of people. I was north of the Arctic Circle for 2 years, and I teased everybody I worked with that they were either moths or vampires because I'd have my seasonal light going as
Yeah.
I would chart, and the moths would just. My friend from California would get about 6 inches from the light, and the ones that didn't have seasonal issues would sort of, shy away from
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
doorway. And then I use blue blockers with screens as well, and tend to start them kind of midday onward, especially try to get my blue blockers on around dinner,
Yeah.
going into bedtime, screen hygiene as you invoked. And then a fascinating thing about D is just that there's all this attention to vitamin D as an immunomodulator and, a cancer preventer, but clearly it's
Right.
got a sunlight vitamin mood
Mhm.
stabilizing effect. So everybody in Alaska is
Yeah.
D deficient until proven otherwise, and it's really
Yeah.
important to get skin exposure, but also just to take enough to have a measurable blood level of 55 to 65 nanograms per mil in the blood. So
Sure. Yeah, I think, that's a huge thing that we, almost everybody talked to is going to know vitamin D is an important, vitamin, a pro-hormone, and most people understand it comes from sunlight. And I think the studies we have, like you mentioned, is like how important when we see vitamin D levels on the higher end, how much that's associated with the better health outcomes. And I just caution people to equate that same for taking a pill and making the levels go up because we also have studies showing that it's a little bit inconclusive about if you supplement, do you get the same benefits? And my
mm,
just the breadth of research on sunlight alone, it's not just about vitamin D.
hmm
It's doing, so many things because with a
yeah,
spectrum of sunlight, you have infrared all the way to UV and beyond things we can even measure, I'm sure. But in that way, I try to, it's not like I don't recommend supplementation. I think that if people just trade one for the other, you'll be missing out on a tremendous
mm,
amount of benefit. And like you mentioned, just get sunlight as much as you can
yeah,
and then if you got to supplement, and we'll try to, find the best of
yeah.
both worlds. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, absolutely brilliant. I love this. Couple things I wanted to add so I don't forget. One is that
Yeah.
Institute for every year when the Institute for Functional Medicine annual international conference happens, I always look forward to it like a music fan looks forward to a big concert, just that
Yeah.
sense of anticipation. And this year, one of the main speakers was uh, really well recognized faculty from Colombia. And he
Okay.
was talking about radical, mind blowing concepts around, microtubules that carry
Uh,
photons all the way into the central nervous
yeah.
system and quantum effects
Yeah.
and going big on the
Yeah.
sunlight cure.
Yeah.
And it was absolutely awesome and
Yeah.
just a tour de force through this. And so I can't emphasize more strongly what Dr. Michael's saying, which is always, 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 if you want a true north, ask yourself, how close can I get to
Mm,
how ancestral equatorial people lived? Another thought experiment I run is when there were times of abundance, how were they spending their days?
right.
Walking, hunting, singing, gathering, eating, having sex, making babies, loving one
Yeah.
another, telling stories. I mean,
Exactly. Yeah.
abundance.
Exactly.
And then out in sunlight and fresh air
Mhm.
and yeah, here, a lot of us will make sure and get out midday during the shortest days of the year, go cross country skiing. I commute on my bike. So
Yeah.
on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'm on my bike or I'm running or beach walking with my dogs midday. So I still get
Yeah.
my sunlight. And then during the longer days of the year, it's very intoxicating, but I have to shut it off when it's not serving me
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
night.
That's- Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just being aware of that and being in a balance with your environment of how you feel, and then if you implement a few tools like that, just few, oh, I'll ride my bike, or let's say take your break from work, just sit outside, or if like I have to do work on my computer, send more emails, I would take my computer outside if you have a connection or whatever, and just even indirect sunlight is better than no sunlight. So getting
Mhm.
any reflective light off of trees or in the shade, or it's just about implementing these things like I talk about in my book, everyday medicine, because I want people to think that not that this is trivial thing, but these are medicine, like a way that moves us closer to health, and how we can rely on the nature's bounty. Let's say this is what our body's meant to be, and move us to a better state of health, so that actually, when I talk to people who have to work, I'm in a job, I'm indoors, that you will be more efficient at your work if you do these things. So I try to pose these kind of questions like, okay, it's 5 minutes a day, how even just sit outside, close your eyes, take a few deep breaths, 5 minutes, set a timer. What I found in my own personal work, and many people feel this, is that you work better later if you're able to do these things. We just get caught up in the cycle of like, I don't have time, how can I do that? Or gotta get sunlight. Well, okay, you walk your dog, you might have to make a phone call, or plan a list of the things you have to do, but get these moments in. And as you mentioned, go back to our blueprint, like the hunter-gatherer lifestyle closest to the equator. And there, I lived also in Fiji for as a Peace Corps volunteer, and it was very hard for me the first couple of months, because people like in the middle of the day would just sleep like under a coconut tree, because that's the hottest time of day. Sun's very intense, and there isn't like a lot of things to do. But I'm sitting around like, come on, aren't we supposed to do something? Like, I'm looking for things to do, and then I realized like, one, these people they don't have a lot of stress. I mean, that's a generalization, but still, it's like we stress ourselves out more than we need to. And two, they're taking advantage of what the environment around them has given them. So as you mentioned, out in Alaska, it's quite different than somewhere close to the equator. But then you have to modify your life to take advantage of what's available for you and when it is, and then know where those boundaries are, and like sleep, and how do you sleep. Some people do better taking a couple naps during the day, and some want a really long, deep sleep in the night, and you just have to know where you work best. And this is just like, this is all kind of like to tap into those um,
Mhm.
to that idea that moving around and changing our lifestyle is worth it, because one, we feel better, and two, we can be more successful as a person, as a member of our family, as a person with whatever work you do. And I think we just, I don't know, I was kind of raised or during my medical training taught that, those things are important, but do these other things first. And no, I kind of came to the realization, no, do the lifestyle first, put as much effort and energy you can into that. And then if you need to shift things with supplements and medications, and we all have been given different, I guess, different profile in our genetics and our health, that we need different things. So we should pay attention to that.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, how about sound, rhythm, and frequency? This is going to be fun.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, this is also another thing we know just in general through cultures and through history and time, that there's always been, music. There's always been some sort of sound component to communal gatherings, whether it's from a spiritual religious standpoint or from getting together and singing songs. Like the Hawaiian have an oral tradition of their history, which many people do, but it's not just the words, although, remembering a history is important. It's what our brain does and our biology does when we're in alignment with those things. And we can, today we know we have music and people listen to different types of music. It can change your mood. It can change your day. I know a lot of people that just need to listen to a song and then they're super motivated, like the Rocky song or just something that they really connect with. And why I bring up this point that, sound, rhythm, and music or frequency is tied into our health is because, it's another one of these, like, light hits our eyes, actually hits our skin, and our body has receptors for that. So it must be meaningful. We have ears and we have vibration, neurons in our skin that can sense change in pressure and vibration. And that's a way that we can get into our nervous system that can help us or it can hurt us. And if we're also intentional about this sort of lifestyle, then we can use sound and music as a way to shift us into the parasympathetic nervous system, the relaxation, heal, and digest mode. It can change our neurotransmitters from being in a more positive mood. And we also know now that we can, like, our cells are responding by information that it's being given, and some of that information is a frequency, and a frequency is essentially like a vibration or an on and off of, let's say, electricity. And that is basically how our modern technology works, right? We're able to have this Zoom call because it's a frequency of information that's on and off, and it hits this certain rate and a rhythm that is information. And so I find that what I've seen, I've studied yoga and some, ancient traditions in a way that, we can use sound, our own voice or singing bowls or music to shift us in our biology. It's not just, because it makes me happy. It actually turns on our healing response. And they've done studies where they look at, what brain waves are in, alpha, beta, gamma. And when we change the music, our brain gets into a different brain state. And another cool study that I've seen is with drumming. And if, drumming is such an ancient practice that, comes from many, like, shamanic tradition, Native Americans, all over the world, just banging on something to create a beat. And what happens is our brain waves can entrain into that rhythm of the beat. And if we use it intentionally, it means that we can shift the state of our nervous system, which means that our body responds to how our brain feels. Like if I'm in a safe place, if I'm in a healing place, if I'm in a deeply connected place, then my immune system is going to shift to be less reactive. And that way, potentially inflammation goes down, pain levels go down. And so I really like to bring up to people, if you like music, then let's start to intentionally shift the music to provide you healing power in your day from that music. And now we have even more science on this with the binaural beats. Have you heard of this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so binaural beats is another way that an ear listens to a different frequency, and then our brain interprets it as the kind of average of those two frequencies, the gap between. And that way the brain waves actually shift, so where we can be in a more focused state, help people who have concentration problems or sleep and relaxation state. And by listening to these sounds, we can move our brain waves and a whole nervous system to act something out completely different. And so, yeah, we can use technology, or if you have a drum at home, you can use it. You can strum your own, instruments. And no matter if you think you're a musician or not, it's going to be beneficial because, it's just the way that our body and our senses interpret the world, and we can influence that.
Awesome. Oh, I love this stuff. I can't get enough.
Yeah. It's it's beautiful when we tap into that, and also the simplicity is
Mhm.
also something powerful to that.
Mhm. Yeah, as we segue into this last topic, I should share that I think I found there's these moments when people are working with me that they develop a trusting rapport. One moment is when uh, I say, "Hey, I'm not trying to be your doctor. I'm just going to share with you what I would do for me or my family, and if that resonates with you, great. If
Right.
not, that's okay. I'm not, sort of fishing for you as my patient." But
Mm.
another is that I'll say they'll presume I'm going to recommend expensive testing or expensive supplements, or that, my supplement that my agenda is for my supplement account to grow. And I'm proud of having good supplements because there's a huge part of how I work. I'm not saying otherwise, but it's so often that I'll say, right now this issue isn't about um, your supplements or your testing. It's about your lifestyle. In a minute, we'll talk about this, but a lot of the time I'll say, you have to be comfortable in your own skin to some degree, even for the lifestyle to work. Those two nodes are talking to one another, mental, emotional,
Exactly.
spiritual. And
Yeah.
so let's wrap up with belief, purpose, and community. Because when I talk to people about that, I think they think to themselves, wow, this guy's real. He's just talking to me like a friend would about
Yeah.
what actually matters to my health. He's not selling me anything.
Yeah, I love that you do that. It's really important. As just also what I think about, working in medicine is like, what can you really do to people? Can you really force people to do anything? No. And would you want to? Not really. So then it kind of like gives you a mental break. Like, at least for me, going through, you think like, I got to do all these things to help this person. But what actually we need to be is like their partner, or just another person. Like, hey, I'm a human, you're a human. Let's just talk it out. I might know some things different than you know. So let's see, what we can come up with. Um, and that's super important. And that definitely taps into the idea of how much, community is important, belief is important, and our just sense of purpose, and whether it's a spiritual idea or not. We have a lot of evidence, especially in these blue zones, which I think people mistake the blue zones. And of course, I'm in Costa Rica, so there's a lot of talk about blue zones, that, it's about what you eat. And, that's been really, I wouldn't say debunked, but of course, what you eat is important, but it's like lower on the totem pole than more than you think. So the highest point of when we look at all these relationships about people who live the longest, and let's say they report they have like a good life or a happy on the happiness scale, the purpose, the sense of purpose and connection in the community seems to be the most important aspect in human health. And that's, kind of ephemeral in a way. It's hard to really, how do you get people to do that? But it's really a cultural, I think, problem, or it's more of a it's a human nature issue that we've disconnected from our real roots as being a mammal, or being a hunter-gatherer, or is connected to a tribe. And whether it's just you know, families that live with each other because they have their extended family around, or it's just you're in a tight-knit community. Those are incredibly important in not just mental health, but all the avenues like you bring up are body, mind, and spirit, because we want to feel needed, and we want to feel accepted, and have offering our gifts into the world, which is really, underrated, that it's important to do that. Because, let's think of the opposite. When we don't do that, if we isolate ourselves, we don't have a purpose, or let's say purpose is like you don't feel like you're expressing yourself the way you would want to in the world, then we can just imagine ourselves in a scenario and it doesn't feel good. So what does our nervous system do? Well, it clamps down. We get into that fight or flight response, more the survival mode. And then we know all the hormone cascades that are associated with that. We're less motivated. We might put on more weight. We might feel less energy in the day. And then chronic issues start showing up. Our blood pressure changes, our heart's under more stress, we get plaques in the arteries, we have, metabolic syndrome where our body's not using sugar properly. And this is all just to like say that it's a cascade. And that's why if we go back and try to get to the root cause of, health issues, the components of how we live within the context of our ecosystem, which is community, other humans, other animals, plants, that is incredibly important because we are not isolated as much as we would think we are, or that modern culture has kind of boxed us into these homes and these kind of container jobs. That's the reality is life is not like that at all. And the sort of disconnect, the more we're disconnected from that, the more these chronic health issues show up. And I know this is, again, these are just like big meta ideas like we're talking about. And then I'd like, I wonder, and you can tell me how you support people in this, but I wonder how we can do better at providing tools to remind people about this element in our health. Have you
Mm,
found anything that
mm.
works really well for you and your patients?
Oh, it's really kind of you to ask. Yeah, what I was flashing on while you're talking is a pair that I think are concerned about a similar issue is David Perlmutter and his son
Uh-huh.
Austin.
Yeah,
Their
yeah.
book Brainwash was their joint effort, and then
Uh,
just the intro was so provocative in itself because the premise is what they call disconnection syndrome. We're
uh,
disconnected from ourselves, we're disconnected from others, we're disconnected from the planet,
mhm,
and so I find I had somebody who who I trust in terms of to make commentary about who and how I am in the world. And they said the characteristic of me as a healer is that I create a space where people realize they can be healthy.
mhm.
So I open up some sort of space for that,
Right.
or I hold space for that. And
Yeah.
I know that even when I was a kid, I would just always love to have meaningful conversations. It could be a conversation about, wow, I really like my bike. Do you like your bike? I mean, that
Yeah.
was a meaningful conversation as a kid, or
Yeah.
let's go swimming, just connecting. But
Right.
also, if somebody said, well, I'm not well, or I don't feel well, or I'm angry, I always would just lean in. Tell me more. Tell me
Right.
more. And so I find there's this invitation then. This really reminds me of Reiki, actually. I was always surprised when I received Reiki that I had to give permission and that I
Uh,
need to be prepared to accept the consequences, including one of the most radical consequences was, what if I got healthy?
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so I say to people, well, are are you interested in the root causes, and are we going to talk about that? But
Yeah.
mostly I'll say it's my job to look for root causes, sort of fearlessly shine the light wherever the root causes are,
Yeah.
just because that's my ethical imperative. That's my, Hippocratic oath.
Sure.
Um, and so sometimes it'll be, hey, you thought that the autoimmunity was, driven by, the Roundup in your food, but it doesn't sound like your partner treats you respectfully, which we know drives autoimmunity, probably 10 to 1. Like
Yeah.
boundary setting would be higher yield, or you told me your job, just you dread it. We know that
Mhm.
has a huge impact on health, or you're living in a part of the country you don't like. Is it potentially worth it to you to live somewhere that you feel healthy? And often people say,
Yeah.
well, I thought that's a bridge too far, but maybe it's not. And I'll just say, I don't know the answer. But the question is, if we're sitting here talking about what you really need to be healthy, there's so many fascinating dimensions of what will you give yourself? How audacious will you be? Are you
Yeah.
willing to let yourself be healthy? Do you
Yeah.
have an agenda that you need to let go of to sabotage or punish? or that you're not worth it. There's just so many.
Yeah.
Almost invariably, they know. They just needed an opening, and
Yeah, exactly. I think that this is also what we've lost, as a disconnection from our, let's say, elders or community. Because let's say I remember reading the story of a centurion from Ireland, and he drank and smoked since he was like 12 or something. And his story was that, well, if I die, then who's gonna talk to my mates at the bar and tell them all the stupid stuff they're doing? And people used him as a resource, kind of just like that. Like, I don't like my job. Blah, blah, blah. He's like, so why are you in the job? And they're like, well, because I need money. Well, what else can you do? So it makes sense, this sort of like wisdom, which is not like, we have this degree and we're, carrying on this sort of idea that we're going to help someone in health. And I think that's just our personalities as healers. And that's how we got into things in medicine or Reiki practitioner or something. But we've lost in this sort of modern cultural context, the sort of sounding boards that, social media is a whole different monster than just being in a group of people that kind of know you after a while and can be free to speak to you in a way that maybe they're just reflecting what you already know. Or like in nature, you look at biodiversity, there's thought diversity of, well, it's good to mix up with different people. They think and believe different things, because maybe I'm stuck in a belief pattern that I didn't realize I'm in, because this other person just is happy-go-lucky and they can do whatever they want. And for some reason, I'm not like that. Why? Let me see how I can. So we reflect to each other those sort of concepts. And, I think that is what I see as, in these blue zones, is really just this community that we can all, well, it's just an idea of like going back to the tribal way of things. And sometimes we had ancestors or elders or people that could just speak their mind and they wouldn't even get in trouble. We all have those sort of like grandparents who are just like, I'm tired of this. Well, why don't you just leave that, guy? He's bad for you. Just get out. And like, oh yeah, I kind of needed that. I need someone to tell me that. So in a way, that's how I think, the lifestyle and especially the important aspects of being in a community or being connected to, a group of people or let's say a culture, doesn't all have to have the same belief patterns. That, we can, our body thrives in those environments instead of in isolation. And we know that, like you mentioned from the beginning, this disconnection syndrome, which now we can even, I think, some countries are making like a medical diagnosis of like nature disconnection syndrome or disorder. I've heard in Canada and Japan, it's like, we're going to prescribe for you, like literally you go to like a hospital and like, your problem is you didn't do enough time in nature, that's, here you go. And that like starts to tap back into these principles of like, oh, no one ever told me that was important. Like, yes, it's like, believe me, just take a 15-minute walk through the woods or something, and you'll have a different perspective by the end of it. And a lot of times we just, we discount the power of those things. And I think like what you mentioned is just opening the space to health and opening the space with the conversation is incredibly powerful. Yeah.
What a blast talking to you today.
That's awesome.
I'm so thankful.
Yeah, me too.
So you've got a book, you've got a retreat, resources. Where can people find you? What should they know about you and your resources?
Well, yeah, I like you, I work with patients. I have a functional medicine practice. I'm mostly online, and I ended up, it took me a couple years to put these concepts into something that I want to share. So I call that my book, Everyday Medicine. And it's just published on Amazon, and it has these sort of like 5 zones of health that we talk about, we brushed over, but then I tap into what is the medical and scientific research, why these are important. And here's what the ancient people used to do and why they did that. And here's the modern science to back it up. So I kind of had these concepts in my head, and I just kind of laid it out in a book where someone could just flip through different chapters and get something maybe they could use every day as their lifestyle, as their form of medicine. And that led me to, realize that we also need to experience, these things, because oftentimes, you can watch a million podcasts or read a million books, and I'm guilty of that because I love to learn new things. But I found really what's super powerful is just to experience it. And I've done a lot of yoga. I've done a lot of going on retreats for myself, and realized that they were really powerful in helping me to experience and to heal. So I'm offering a retreat this December in Costa Rica about these sort of principles and practices, whether we, spend time doing a few things, from moving, breathing, to connecting with different light, how light affects us, and nature, of course. And, having people reflect, like in a positive way of how did this help me? What tool I liked, what tools I didn't like, and then to really, the goal of the retreat is for people to experience things, come up with some practical tools they can do every day, and then kind of make a goal or a promise to themselves. Like, I'm going to try this and see how I feel. So I try to make it like, that we have some ownership or buy-in. And to me, that's really where I've seen these tools work the best, is if we, feel it, experience it, and then we just practice it. So that's my retreat coming up in December. It's actually a New Year's retreat. So I'm hoping to see people come out and experience these things.
Fantastic. Is there a website or some place to land where are the
Yeah.
resources collated in, one
So
place?
my general website for this is www.everyday-medicine.com. And a lot of things I put on Instagram is, at Dr. Michael Blahut on Instagram. And I try to get simple, practical tools for people and motivational things and just educational videos out there for people.
Well, Dr. Michael, you made my day.
Thanks.
I'm
Yeah,
sure
you
you're going to make the
too.
day of a lot of people who listen.
I love talking with you too, and I'm sure we could go on and on about all these things.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Thanks for joining us for the Seaworthy podcast. Seaworthy exists to help people overcome their health challenges and be fully vital. If you think we've earned it, please consider giving this podcast a like, subscribing, and giving us a 5-star rating on the platform of your choice. Thanks.